I mentioned before we start, we have a guest joining us, Frank Gaffney. He is the founder of the Center for National Security, and he is just a great American patriot. I'll give you a little tiny bit about his background. Founder and executive chairman of the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. He was formerly acted as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy during the Reagan administration, following 4 years of service as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Forces and Arms Control Policy. He is just a towering figure in the world of national security in Washington and around the world, a prominent spokesman on behalf of all sorts of issues in defense of America, especially relating to national security, based in Washington, D.C. And joining me today, I believe we have him on Skype. Hi, Frank.
Hello, Debbie. Thank you very much for those exceedingly generous introductory remarks.
Well, they happen to be, as my dad used to say, a true story. So, Frank, I want to start with first. You had a piece, it was actually on the Center for Security Policy website that was talking about this election and kind of where we are in the middle of this no result yet election. And I think it was called, I actually don't have it here, I guess, but it was called God Help Us. And you're basically talking about where we are. Can you tell me from your perspective in Washington, what is your overall reaction to where we are in this place where we do not yet have a firm answer of what the election outcome was? What's your read on all where we are in America?
Well, I think your first five were extremely accurate in characterizing where we are, Debbie. I think this has been a train wreck that has been in the making for some time. You go back to the Obama administration and Barack Obama's pledge on the eve of his first presidential victory that we were on the eve of fundamentally transforming this country. And I think that's what he set about to do. I think he made it his mission while president. I believe he moved the ball as far as he could in the time he had available. I think he assumed Hillary Clinton would carry on once she were elected as his successor. When that didn't happen and Donald Trump grabbed the steering wheel and turned it the other direction, he made it his mission, as did others in his party and on the left more generally, to do everything possible to destroy Donald Trump. And we saw this in any number of aspects of the period between his famously coming down the escalator in Trump Tower in New York right through to the present day. But Debbie, I think where we find ourselves right now, and the reason in my commentary yesterday I invoked God's blessing on us, is that this is perilously close, despite everything you said, which is true, that the American people don't want to see their country transformed into a socialist, let alone a totalitarian state. They don't want to give up their freedoms. They don't want to submit to the diktats of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Ilhan Omar or AOC or any of these other radical Democrats, yes, to some extent, but Marxists, I think, increasingly describes them. Even Joe Biden, in going along with their manifesto, dictated by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. These are people who have either become, I guess, fellow travelers or out and outright Marxists, but what they have in mind is not something the rest of us want. And it is inexplicable, other than by fraud, that we are at a point now where Joe Biden is within 6 electoral college votes of becoming the president of the United States. And Donald Trump has a lot more ground to cover, but a shot at it, but not a great shot, I think it has to be said. And that, I think, does, again, come down to the fact that this train wreck, this fundamental transformation, whatever you want to call it, had been engineered for certainly months, if not years, and we've just seen its culmination up to a point. Now, what we haven't seen yet, but that is coming, I feel quite certain, is what's been described as a color revolution. a campaign to go into the streets, to destabilize not just the Trump administration, to delegitimize it, to further discredit this whole electoral process for the purpose of ultimately, if they can, bringing down our constitutional republic in its entirety. And they will use violence, they will use civil disorder and disruptions, they will use so-called peaceful demonstrations and whatever else they think is necessary to try to achieve those two goals. Yes, remove Donald Trump from office at last, and yes, end the form of government that we take for granted, that has given us such blessings, but that is not a permanent state of affairs. Just last thought, my old boss Ronald Reagan used to talk about every generation facing an existential threat to freedom. And if we don't fight for it, if we don't protect it and pass it on to our children to do the same, we will find, as he put it famously at one point, ourselves telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States when men were free. Now, that's not something I intend to do, but I'm afraid that's now in distinct prospect.
This is I'm so glad you're able to join me today. And I should mention to our listeners, yesterday we had a great interview with another gentleman who is affiliated with the Center for Security Policy, Kyle Scheidler, who was also talking about the similar kinds of ideas. And the reason I want to get back with you today, Frank, and talk about this is, I mean, with the votes, we believe all the votes have been cast, except, the ones who are still in the basement somewhere filling out more of the mail-in ballots. But for the rest of America who cast ballots, I think there were many Americans alert to what you're talking about, that whatever used to be seen as a radical, extreme, small little element of America has become mainstream Democrat agenda. I think that there are just a lot of voters who really didn't know that maybe they thought all they were doing was, they want to vote for someone who's nicer, or someone who doesn't have the New York City brashness of Donald Trump. But I still believe, is why I think that it's a signal of the American people's preferences that they held on to Republican majority in the Senate, they increased the Republican minority in the House. I don't think that the majority of Americans wanted what is coming. And I also think it's incumbent on people like you especially, and Kyle Scheidler and the Center for Security Policy, to keep on telling people how serious and earnest and determined this leftist Marxist takeover of America this agenda is in America today. It's not like they're thinking, well, we're still paving the way and maybe 10 more years, 20 more years. They are wanting to disrupt America and cause people to be so fearful that we concede to what they asked for, with the sense somehow if we just give in, then maybe everything can be okay again. And I want to keep talking about this topic because I want my listeners not only to learn it, but to share it with their friends, just how earnest and far down the path the left is, and how too many people don't see what they're watching as a Marxist revolution in the making. They think it's just a series of kind of crazy radical leftist groups. So I want to go back to that and talk a little bit more about these groups in the streets. Like there's in Washington, D.C. Actually, I want to ask you this. The color revolution, you use that term. Because you used it sometime recently when we spoke, I looked it up. Can you describe what that term means, where it comes from?
Sure. It's been a hallmark of a number of uprisings around the world. Perhaps one of the best known is the one in Ukraine, in which not infrequently the activists who put it together adopt the color of the flag, or sort of a traditional color of their nation. In the case of Ukraine, for example, it was orange. And it came to be known as the Orange Revolution, hence the color revolution. Another, which I guess was green, because it was the color of Islam, was the Muslim Brotherhood's color revolution in Egypt. That one had the effect of removing Hosni Mubarak, a long time, if imperfect, friend of the United States, and bringing to power enemies of the United States, the Muslim Brotherhood, with the strong support of Barack Obama's administration, the Obama-Biden administration.
Yeah,
That's
wasn't
the
that
genesis
Morsi?
of that term.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
Mohammed Morsi was the Muslim Brotherhood figure who took over after Mubarak was overthrown. But this is, I believe, the Egyptian revolution in particular is part of the playbook that people now on the radical left, the revolutionaries in our country, seem to be intent on executing against Donald Trump. Interestingly enough, Debbie, you were kind to grace our television program, SecuringAmerica.tv, the other day, and we discussed this a bit. Today, we did a profile on one of these revolutionaries, a woman by the name of Lisa Fathian, and she has been prominent in fomenting the insurrection. She's been active with Antifa, with Black Lives Matter, with trade unions, and now with the group that is beginning to lay siege to the White House. It's called Shut Down DC. And in the course of this, my monologue in that show, I showed her talking about working with people who are willing to break windows of federal buildings so that they can be occupied, and we need to do that, as she put it. That, you're the attorney, Debbie, but my distinct impression is that would rise to a felony offense for conspiring to attack and damage federal property. And it seems to me that it's high time that people like Lisa Fathian ought to be, arrested and removed from the kind of instigator role that she's currently playing, that will bring mayhem to our streets and perhaps have the end result they seek, the overthrow of, again, both our sitting president and our country in due course.
One great point that Kyle Scheidler was talking about yesterday, and actually I agree with you, Frank, by the way, yes, she's talking about committing crimes, conspiring, urging others to commit crimes. And it is astonishing, actually, at this point that so many people and actors like her remain out, free to speak, free to do the next Zoom call, the next thing, yeah. Kyle Scheidler made the point, too, though, that many Americans, and maybe those especially who are tired of or concerned about the violence in America's cities, they might have the idea, or I posed the question, they might have the idea, well, maybe if we just take Trump out, and we get Joe Biden in, all these people will quiet down and go away. And Kyle said, no, that is not true. They're not really just trying to be sure Trump loses and Biden wins. It's a deeper mission they have. Can you also talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's really the point. They will try to convey the impression that they will leave us alone if we'll just give them what they want. That's the kind of mafiosa approach. I think we talked about this the other day. You got a nice store here. It'd be terribly sad if something bad happens. Yeah. It's an extortion kind of operation. And whether it's the store or whether it's the White House, these are people who intend to exercise whatever pressure is necessary, or they'll get away with at least, to effect both this immediate political transformation, but make no mistake about it, whether Joe Biden's in office or Kamala Harris is in office or anybody else for that matter is in office, they will not cease their efforts because they're Marxists. They're trained, self-declared Marxists, and their objective has to be ultimately the demise of a country that is in the way of the fulfillment of the Marxists' goal. And that's where we find ourselves at the moment. We must not accede to this extortion. We must resist it, and we must ultimately, effect the victory over this enemy within, as well as, by the way, the Chinese Communist Party, which is actively aiding and abetting it as well from outside.
It's an astonishing thing, Frank. I know when I asked you about joining me in today's show, you said you really need to be we're at our wrap-up time, I think. So I'm going to just say that next time we do this, hopefully we know who's our president, but I had wanted to talk with you about just contrasting the national security policy priorities the Trump administration should have the next time around, contrast that with how you think the Biden administration, what they would see as their priorities, because they're not on the same page. But I promise we'll be done at 3:30. So Frank Gaffney, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure's mine. I look forward to coming back and having a much longer conversation, Debbie. Thank you.
We'll do it, sir. Good. Take care. Thank you. Okay, folks, I got to tell you, Frank Gaffney, Center for Security Policy. You can follow him. Actually, just put in secure, if you ever want to read his writings, securefreedom.org. He's a great writer, great thinker, as you heard, roots in the Reagan administration and the early era of fighting what was then the mortal enemy of Russia and just communist Russia and their aggression, the Soviet Union's aggression around the world. Lessons learned from that he's taken into and really made a fabulous contribution to America through the formation of the Center for Security Policy and coming up with all sorts of taking the reasoning and lessons learned from that and applying them to all the challenges America faces in many, many arenas. So just great writer. And one thing I was going to mention to you that was on their website, and I didn't get to him with, but there's a lot of talk about the time to fight these, not just what he's talking about, fight fight back against, push back against this impending Marxist revolution in America. But the time to fight them is now.